Good morning, cruises. It is about 14 degrees Celsius outside, which means it is not quite 60 degrees. But I don't care. It's Sunday, it's summer, so I'm wearing a short sleeve, kind of beachy shirt. I was wearing my straw hat outside today this morning. Um, that's very unusual. The locals are all wearing sweatshirts today, unless they're out exercising. But anybody I passed on the street, you can tell, local Brit, sweatshirt or some sort of long sleeve thing because, well, it may be summer, but it's still a little breezy. So yeah, I'm in short sleeves, and I stick out like a sore thumb. Oh well, whatever. Um, so I've had a pretty fun last week. Starting back last weekend, a coworker invited me to his house. He was doing a big barbecue, like a big outdoor cookout barbecue thing. It was great. It was a ton of fun. He and his wife and his two kids live in a big place, a little bit west, still in London, but in West London, and biggest place I've been in, biggest friend's house I've been in since I got here. Really nice. There was about 20 adults plus all of their various kids, and it was just a big cookout, and it was fun. We did chicken and burgers and hot dogs, and like everybody brought sides, and it was fantastic. I made an avocado and bean and red onion and cherry tomato salad thing, so thank you, Laura. I stole that right off of your Instagram and made it myself. It was great. Um, Everybody loved it. It was gone before the end, so that worked out well. But yeah, it was good to feel like surrounded by people at the kind of cookout that I might go to um, at our house, uh, Hubbard's. It was great. It was a good time. Um, so that was last weekend. This week was 4th of July week, so I had Thursday off, 4th, and I took Friday off. So the rest of the country, of course, this was just a normal week, nothing special for them. So I took advantage and did some things. So on the 4th, went with a coworker to Bletchley Park. Bletchley Park is about an hour-ish north of London. He drove. Um, so I took the tube to his place, got in his car, we drove. And yeah, like I said, it's about an hour. It is right on a train line. We easily could have taken the train. He felt like driving. Um, Part of why it is where it is because it's right on a train line. It was right on a train line. It is a location where, and this was secret up until the 1980s, it is where the British military, with some Allies' assistance, but almost entirely British. There was a few Americans there by the end, um, like less than 100 out of a group of 9,000. But it's where they broke Enigma. It is where the British intelligentsia military uh, broke codes. It's the home of the code breakers. So it was really interesting, really exciting. They still have some of the original huts up where those codes were broken. They also have rebuilt some of them so that they look like they did in the era. It originally started as it's a mansion. It's a Victorian era, I want to say, that's right, mansion. Um, it was on a huge plot of land. It got broken up into several pieces. The guy that bought it felt like they were going to need something like this. World War I had just ended, and there were code breakers in World War One as well. There was two departments. The one that was kind of lesser well known was part of um, MI 1A or B, something like that. And then the other one was Room 40. Room 40 is apparently a little more well known. They were part of the Admiralty. So the Admiralty kind of just called them what room they were in the Admiralty building. Room 40, your group Room 40. They did have another name, but nobody uses it because everybody knows it as Room 40. So between the wars, it was decided that The military could not support two groups that were doing effectively the same thing, but they wanted to keep signals security and breaking and making of codes alive and active. So they combined them, and they, named it one thing, and then they eventually, before World War II started, but getting close to World War II, like people knew something was happening, they moved them out to Bletchley Park. It was all top secret. I mean, I could go on forever. We had an amazing tour guide who explained this whole thing. And, but they invented a shooting party, like a hunting party, effectively. Like, oh no, we're headed up to the mansion for a shooting party, so that they could have reason for people to go up there. And then they invited the post office to come in and had post office training that way. But yeah, eventually, and so Bletchley's Park started as just a couple hundred people. There were like a top secret how you got like slid paper. It was all people in university, people who had just graduated, professors, people who were about to graduate, and people got given kind of like top secret. They didn't even know it was happening. Tests, if they answered certain questions in certain ways, and if they could think in the right way to break codes and whatnot, they were handed envelopes and told, don't open this until the war starts. And then apparently when the war starts and they opened it, the letter said, come to this location. The story is there was also a 10 bob note in there so that you could absolutely get there no matter what, but nobody really knows that for certain. But that's the story. And yeah, so Bletchley Park is where they broke Enigma, and they worked very hard, and they did a number of different types of, sorry, this light source I was using went out. Like the German Navy and the German Air Force and the SS and the high military commanders had different Enigma machines, and each one had to be broken. So it wasn't like they broke one and boom, now they could read everything. But it helped. And so the person that you may know, you probably know, who worked there, was Alan Turing, very famous. They made a movie, The Imitation Game, with Benedict Cumberbatch in it. And yeah, but what really happened there was that and everything else. Because like I said, by the end of the war, there were over 8,000 people working there. Over 3/4 of them were women. And this Bletchley Park tells their story. It was great fun. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, so that's what I did with my 4th of July. Thursday, I came home. Friday, I had decided I wanted to go to the beach because it was 4th of July weekend, and dang it, I wanted to go to the beach. The closest beach, the easiest, fastest to get to beach, is Brighton, which is super well known and famous. First of all, I mean, it's been a seaside beach resort for a very long time. Again, I believe Victorian times. People used to take the waters, which I think didn't just mean like going in the ocean, but also drinking seawater. But anyway, so you take the waters at Brighton. Nowadays, it's only an hour train ride from London. So even in Victorian era, it wouldn't have been that long a trip. Even with slower trains, it wouldn't have been that long. You could still get there the same day that you left. You didn't need a sleeper car. So the other thing that Brighton is well known for, besides the seaside town, the Victorian era beach resort, when they were building a kind of hopeful beachside arcade with a pier and everything like that. That is Brighton. They had a pier, they had an arcade, they had all that classic seaside stuff to do. When they were building one of those in New York, the guy who was principally in charge of putting that all together in Brooklyn decided to name that one Brighton as well, and that is why you have Brighton Beach in Brooklyn. It is named after Brighton in England. It's also, to me at least, very heavily associated with The Who. You've got from the first rock opera, Tommy, the song Pinball Wizard, from Soho down to Brighton. I must have played them all, about pinball machines. Spoiler alert, I did not get to play pinball. I could not find any pinball machines in Brighton, so I'll have to look next time, but I didn't see any. Anyway, so there's Tommy, and then actually Quadrophenia, which was their second one. That's where the song Love Reign Over Me is from. Quadrophenia is about the mods and the rockers. There was a huge, like 2-day long brawl in Brighton between two teenage rebel groups, the mods and the rockers. Mods were the ones on scooters and with the long coats, and they used the RAF patch, like the little round red, white, and blue circle. And rockers were more like greasers, I guess, leather jackets, slick back hair, and more traditional motorcycles rather than Vespas and such. So yeah, teenage riots, Quadrophenia, Brighton, The Who, it's great. So I got on the train, went down, and it was a fine train ride, that train. So I got to go on a new train. It's called the Thames Link. It's not actually part of the tube, but many of their stops in London share with tube stops, so you can kind of swap off and on. You can, if you have a Thames Link ticket. So I was able to take the tube from where I live over to where it connects with the Thames Link, and then get off and then give my ticket, go through the next part of the machines, and I was off down to Thames Link. So Thames Link actually goes all the way up to Cambridge, possibly further, I don't know, but I looked, it goes up to Cambridge. If I want to go visit Cambridge, that's how I'll go. And then it goes south down to Brighton. And there's other branches that split off as well, obviously, but I was most interested in that because that's where I wanted to go. So I got to Brighton by, I don't know, like 10:30 in the morning. I didn't rush to get out of the house early or anything like that. Brighton is a pebble beach, and at 10 o'clock in the morning on British summer, the water was so cold. Dang, it was cold. By like later in the afternoon, like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, when I was walking around, there were people actually in the water, but it's not known for being like Florida beach warm, y'all. It's a whole different thing. But yeah, I did a lot in Brighton. It's super fun. There is an incredibly well-known ice cream parlor. I didn't go there. I did go up the British Airways I-360, which is a pretty neat 360 viewing tower. And it's sponsored by British Airways. It wasn't built by them, but it's sponsored by British Airways. So they staff it with people in British Airways outfits, and they wand you down as you go in, and you have to get a paper ticket. And your ticket isn't a ticket; they call it a boarding pass. So yeah, they treat it like you're going on a trip. But really, you just go way up high in the air, and you get this amazing 360 view of Brighton. You can look down the beach, both to the east and the west. You can look due south, and you cannot make out France, or at least I couldn't on this day. But I could make out some wind, like a wind farm, a turbine farm out there, way out in the distance. So that was pretty neat. They serve alcohol. So there's beer and wine and champagne, and you're only up there for maybe 15-20 minutes. I didn't count exactly, but you go out and you can also look back across the town and get this amazing view of Brighton. So actually Brighton, a while back, combined with the city next to it, which is called Hove. So that area is now technically called Brighton and Hove. That's the name of the city, and Brighton is like the area that's down by the beach, I think. So anyway, you can look out over and see Brighton and Hove all the way to the west and to the east. Sorry. And to the north. But again, you can't see London. It's too far away. So you can't see London. You can't see France. Little joke, sorry. So then that came down, and I went out to the pier. You can see the original where the original pier was. That got wrecked by fire as well. No, storm. Sorry, a storm. And they've left like remnants of it, so you can still kind of see that. But then they built a brand new, bright, shining pier with blinking lights, and there is two big arcade rooms, um, and there's rides, bumper cars, and just all sorts of stuff out on the pier. As I said earlier, I did not get to play pinball, but what I did play a bunch of because I was told that it was there, so I brought a bunch of change. They have those. What the room is full of is those like drop a coin in and it lands on a ledge, and then the little slidey comes out and it pushes the thing and it tries to push the next thing. I'm either not good at those or you're not supposed to be good at those. But I dropped about 3 pounds in various small change, so I had fun. I mean, I played for a while. I just won absolutely nothing. Um, yeah, not even so much as a ticket. But it was fun and it's loud and it's a good time and everybody's having a good time and it's part of the experience. It's part of what you do. Also, because I was told this is what you do by some of the actual English people I do, you eat fish and chips on the pier. Like, there may be other restaurants in Brighton that you want to eat at, but part of the Brighton experience, part of it, and it's a nostalgia thing, right? People went there as kids, and so then they're coming back, and so then they're bringing their kids and they're passing it along. There's candy floss, which is what they call cotton candy. There's toffee apples. There's donuts and churros and all sorts of stuff like that. And then there's fish and chips and battered sausage and all this sort of stuff. Battered sausage is not worth eating a whole battered sausage. Might be like fun to share with people, but yeah. The fish and chips on the pier were just fine. Again, nostalgia and heat and summer sun probably make it better. Summer sun definitely made it better, like hanging out um, in a beach chair and eating a box of fish and chips was super fun. I loved it. It was definitely worth doing. Um, but it's not like the fish and chips were, oh my God, best fish and chips. It's worth the trip to Brighton. No, it's just it's part of going to Brighton, so you go and you do it. Um, but so then other things that are exciting in Brighton, there is an area that they call the Lanes. It's like a mixture of alleyways and mews and small streets and side streets and larger streets, and they all interconnect, and they are jam-packed filled with stores. It is antiques and jewelry stores and record shops and postcard stores and clothing boutiques and antiques and um, just vegan shoe stores and fancy chocolatiers. There is a well-known, famous fancy chocolatiers whose name escapes me, Chalky Walkie, something like that, around a corner and down a side street and whatever. And they've been on British television countless times, and they have closed. And everybody that came up while I was there didn't know that. Like, they must have closed real recently because there were a ton of people. Like, I was not the first person to figure out that they were closed and stand there and try to look inside. And people would come up behind. People were there already, and then I came up, and people came up behind, and everybody's talking to each other, and they're looking it up on the internet. And it was like less than a month ago they closed with no notice. And there's just a sign on it that says, "We have closed. Inquiries, call this phone number." Not even a website, not even an email address. I think it was just a phone number. So, like, local institution closed down, and that's too bad for whatever the reason was. It's a bummer. Apparently, they were amazing cake makers and chocolatiers, and like the kind of cakes that look like animals or monsters or people or beach seaside scenes or whatever, and they were just amazing. But I didn't get to go in and see that. A lot of jewelry stores, a lot of antique stores, a lot of fun times, a lot of restaurants, pubs, restaurants, cafes. You could stop in and get something to eat or drink every 2 or 3 shops. So, yeah, great fun time. Really enjoyed that area. And then I didn't really have a plan for how long I was going to stay. There is an area called the Marina that was a little even further east than where I was. I was thinking about going down that way, but then I saw the like Royal Pavilion Park, where King and Queen had basically made a getaway from the city, and then now, not that building, but like the building next to it has become the Brighton Art Museum and Art and History Museum. Museum and Art? What do they call it? The Brighton Museum of Art? Dang it. Oh well. Anyway, I put it in the Instagram pictures and everything. Um, it's, a small building, and there's a £6 entrance fee, but worth it. Good times. The main thrust of the museum is it's a design and art museum. So, like Art Nouveau, Art Deco, chairs, um, pottery, things that are both functional and artistic. So, that's like the main thrust of it. But then they also have a fine art room and a modern art room, and they have some special exhibitions on like queer clothing and on the trans experience. Brighton is a LGBT center in England. It is like one of the most LGBT friendly cities in England, maybe in all of the UK. High population percentage. Um, they do a huge pride parade, that sort of thing. So it makes sense that they would have that in the museum, a focus towards their LGBT history and where they are today, both. They also have like a beach seaside thing where they do where they showed old Punch and Judy shows. They had a Vespa from the Quadrophenia Mods and Rockers era. Um, they had an ancient Egypt room that I didn't go into, and they had. Hey, I don't know what happened. Somehow the video stopped videoing and then started again. There's like a weird break. So, sorry, this is just the interstitial video to say technical difficulties. We'll be right back. The special exhibition that they were all really excited about, and when you came up and you bought your ticket, they're like, "Oh, you got to go see the special exhibition." Was like the World Natural Photographers Competition. The It was all being shown there. They got thousands and thousands of photographs sent in from people all over the world, and in like 6 different categories. And they had all of these for special consideration on the wall, and all of the winners, and then the grand prize winners as well in another room. They asked very specifically that you not take any pictures of the pictures. Um, Apparently, the copyright belongs to each of the individual people who took them. So you cannot take pictures, which is too bad because they were absolutely amazing, mind-blowing pictures. They are the best nature photographers in the world, and they did a mind-blowing job of curating. And they had a story for each picture, and some of it was taken out in nature. And one that sticks in my head was a spider hunting a frog. But they also had documentary. There was a whole section called documentary that was more about animals that were being used in shows and whatnot, and they took pictures of them, sometimes in secret, sometimes anyway. Really powerful, moving, excellent exhibition in Brighton. That was fantastic. Um, so, um, but there was so much more in the museum. I could have spent even more time in there, but then eventually I just got tired of being on my feet, and I was exhausted and I wanted to go home. So I walked back to the train station, and I walked through the turnstiles, and I jumped on a train as they were blowing whistles to say close the doors. So I got home, and that was great. And so that was my trip to Bletchley Park and my trip to Brighton. I had a really good time at both, and yesterday I really just cleaned up the house. Oh, and I tried to get my hair cut, but the guy was closing up early. It was like 3 p.m. and his thing said he was open till 6. I think he was going to watch the England game, and he just didn't want to be at work anymore. Well, it's his barber shop. He's Tony, and it's Tony's barber shop. And if Tony wants to go home, Tony just looks at you and says, "Can you come back Monday?" And you go, "Sure." Because do you really want to be like, "No, your sign says 6 o'clock and you need to cut my hair," to a guy who's got sharp scissors next to your head? No, don't be that guy. Just say, "Sure, Tony, go ahead, go watch the game, man. I'll catch you Monday." So, I kind of could use a haircut, but I'll get a haircut this week. Um, Last thing, so of course, because I went to Brighton and that Who connection, pulled out my vinyl, listened to Quadrophenia yesterday, blasted that while I was cleaning the house. It's a double album, so 4 sides. Had a great time. Listened to a lot of Who yesterday. And then what did I find out when I was going through Twitter? So one of the Twitter things that I subscribe to is the train that I take to work every day. And it is also the train that most of London would take to Wembley Park. Wembley Park, big stadium, lots of concerts. So occasionally the Twitter's just like, "Hey, when you're coming home from the Pink concert this evening, or when you're coming home from the Spice Girls concert this evening, stand in this queue if you're going to Aylesbury, and stand in this queue if you're going to Oxford, and stand in this queue if you're going to London Marylebone," and blah, 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 blah. The Who played. The Who played this weekend. How cool is that? I was in Brighton. The Who was playing at Wembley Stadium. It was a good time. All right. I could keep talking and go on forever, but this video is already almost 30 minutes long. I love you guys. Bye.